Hello, Professor Wu and the A's. My name is Giovanno and Zhong, and now I'm going to explain number one. So this is the first question for number one. What is a tariff and what is a reciprocal tariff? A tariff is a tax imposed by a government on imported goods and services from other countries. It is used to restrict trade, protect domestic industries, and generate revenue. While a reciprocal tariff is a trade policy where a country imposes tariffs on imports from another country in response to similar tariffs imposed by that country. The goal is to create fair trade conditions by matching the other country's trade barriers. Next question. How will this reciprocal tariff directly affect Taiwan's export to the United States, and how will it directly affect Taiwan's import from the United States? So, the reciprocal tariff will directly make Taiwan's export to the United States more expensive because when a tariff is imposed on goods entering a country, it increases the cost of those goods for consumers and businesses in the importing country. In this case, Taiwanese goods entering the US would face a tariff initially 32%, then 10% for 90 days. This higher price would likely reduce demand for Taiwanese products in the US as they become less competitive compared to domestically produced goods or goods from countries not subject to such tariffs. Consequently, this could lead to a decrease in the volume and value of Taiwan's export to the United States. Next, the direct effect on Taiwan's imports from the United States. So, the reciprocal tariff, as described in the text, is explicitly stated as being imposed on nearly every country in the world by the Trump administration, and Taiwan's reciprocal tariff rate was applied to Taiwan. The phrasing focused on the US imposing tariffs and Taiwan facing these tariffs on its export to the US. So, the text does not state that Taiwan is imposing its own reciprocal tariffs on US imports into Taiwan in response to the US tariffs. While countries often retaliate with their own tariffs, the provided information only details the US tariffs impacting Taiwan's exports. Therefore, based solely on the given information, there is no direct impact described on Taiwan's import from the United States due to the specific set of reciprocal tariffs mentioned in the prompt. The tariffs described are the US imposed tariffs on goods entering the US from other countries, including Taiwan. If Taiwan were to impose its own retaliatory tariffs on US goods, that would be a separate, though related, policy decision not detailed here. Next, what is the nominal exchange rate, and how will the nominal exchange rate be affected by this reciprocal tariff? So, nominal exchange rate is the price of one currency in terms of another. For example, like how many new Taiwan dollars or NTD are needed to buy one US dollar. So the impacts of the reciprocal tariffs are the tariffs reduce demand for Taiwanese exports, lowering demand for NTD in the foreign exchange market. At the same time, if Taiwan imports fewer US goods, fewer USD will be exchanged for NTD. So the net effect, reduced demand for NTD relative to USD will cause NTD depreciates or more NTD per USD. So this is the graph I have prepared before. So the nominal exchange rate on y-axis and quantity of US dollar on x-axis. So the tariffs make Taiwanese goods more expensive in the US, and of course the demand for Taiwanese goods in the US falls, and this causes fewer USD to be supplied to Taipei's foreign exchange market. Therefore, the supply curve in the graph shift leftward from S1 to S2. Since Taiwan has no retaliatory tariffs on US goods and Taiwan is still continue buying US goods at the same rate, there's no change in the demand for USD. Therefore, the demand curve in the graph is remain unchanged or it doesn't shift anywhere. The nominal exchange rate increased because the demand for NTD falls relative to USD and the supply of USD shift leftward in the Taipei foreign exchange market. Therefore, as you can see, the nominal exchange rate shift upward from E1 to E2 or increase. While the quantity of USD falls, as you can see, the Q1 shift leftward to Q2 or decrease because the tariffs make Taiwanese goods more expensive for American buyers. So fewer USD are supplied to the Taipei exchange market And of course, the quantity of USD in the Taipei foreign exchange market falls. Next question. Based on your graphical analysis, will the new Taiwan dollar appreciate or depreciate as a result of the reciprocal tariff? So based on my graphical analysis, the NTD will depreciate or weaken against the USD because the demand for NTD falls relative to USD. Next question. How will this reciprocal tariff directly affect the United States net exports? So as you know that net exports are defined as a country's total exports minus its total imports. So net exports equal total exports minus total imports. So the US reciprocal tariff makes Taiwanese goods more expensive for US consumer. This directly leads to a decrease in US import from Taiwan, as the higher price will likely reduce the US demand for these Taiwanese goods. The provided text describe the US imposing tariffs on imports from other countries, including Taiwan. It does not state that Taiwan has imposed retaliatory tariffs on US goods. Therefore, based solely on the information given, there's no direct impact described on US exports to Taiwan as a result of these specific tariffs. Given a decrease in US imports from Taiwan and no described direct change in US export to Taiwan, the United States net export will directly increase or improve as a result of this reciprocal tariff. Next question. What is the real exchange rate and how will it be affected by the reciprocal tariff? So real exchange rate is the nominal exchange rate adjusted for price differences between countries reflects purchasing power. So the impacts of the tariff are the nominal depreciation of NTD makes Taiwanese goods cheaper abroad if price don't fully adjust. However, the tariff itself raised the price of Taiwanese goods in the US, offsetting some of the exchange rate effect. And the net effect is the real exchange rate may depreciate or the real exchange rate may depreciate if the nominal effect dominates, making Taiwanese goods relatively cheaper. So this is the graph I have drawn and prepared before. So the real exchange rate on the y-axis and quantity of US dollar on the x-axis. So the tariffs make Taiwanese goods more expensive in the US, and of course the demand for Taiwanese goods in the US falls, and this causes fewer USD to be supplied to Taipei foreign exchange market. Therefore, as you can see, the supply curve in the graph shift leftward or decrease from S1 to S2. While since Taiwan has no retaliatory tariffs on US goods and Taiwan is still continue buying US goods at the same rate, there's no change in the demand for USD. Therefore, as you can see in the graph, the demand curve is remain unchanged or it doesn't shift anywhere. Next, real exchange rate increased. As you can see in the graph, the real exchange rate increased from E1 to E2 because the US tariff reduced the supply of USD. And the tariff makes Taiwanese imports more expensive for American buyers and makes US consumers buy fewer Taiwanese goods. As a result, fewer USD are supplied to the foreign exchange market. Therefore, the quantity of US dollars shift leftward from Q1 to Q2 or decrease. With fewer USD available and stable demand, the price of USD rise in real terms. To buy the same US goods, foreigners must give up more of their own goods. Last question. Based on your graphical analysis, will the reciprocal tariff actually improve the United States net exports as Trump expects? In my opinion, unlikely to significantly improve net exports because one, reduced imports from Taiwan may be offset by reduced US exports if Taiwan retaliates. Now, second, the nominal depreciation of NTD could make Taiwanese goods more competitive, partially counteracting the tariff. And third balance depend on many factors. For example, like domestic savings and investment, not just tariffs. So in conclusion, the tariff may have a small short-term effect, but is unlikely to sustainably improve the US trade balance due to potential retaliation and exchange rate adjustments. That's all from me. Thank you.
Hello everyone and Professor, my name is Keiffer and today I'm going to present the video presentation with number 2. The first questions of the number 2 is how would the increase in Taiwan semiconductor export to United States and the rest of the world after Taiwan real GDP and overall price level in the short run? Explain your reasoning using both descriptive and graphical analysis. Okay, so in the short run, the increase in the Taiwan semiconductor export to United States and the rest of the world would likely to lead to several key economics effects on Taiwan real GDP and overall price level. To explain this, we can apply a basis macroeconomic theory, focusing on aggregate demands, aggregate supply, and other intersection. The first, using the graph, we can see the y-axis is the price level, and also the x-axis is the output. So in this case, we know that the aggregate demand for this case is gonna go up. When the Taiwan semiconductor export rise, it increases demand for Taiwan's goods and service from abroad. And also export of the component aggregate demand increase in semiconductor export would lead to higher overall demand in Taiwanese product. Next, to the effect on real GDP. In the short run, the rightward shift in aggregate demand curves lead to increase in real GDP. So the rightward curve uh, from the aggregate demands means the higher in real GDP because it is higher in demand for goods and services, increasing production, employment, and income within Taiwan's economy. And now we're gonna see in the effect on the price level. So this is the price level. We see in the short run, the increase in aggregate demands leads to upward pressures on the overall price level. As the demand for goods and services rise, firms may face a higher cost of production due to increased demand for labor and raw materials, and they may pass the cost on consumers through higher prices. Now, we're going to see in the short aggregate supplies and inflation. If Taiwan economy is operating near a full capacity, the increase in aggregate demand could lead to demand the pull inflation. Because in other words, as the AD curve shifts to the right like this, in the short term, we'll be driving up prices and leading to increase in the price level. Next, we're gonna move to the second question. Now we're gonna move on to second questions. We say that what type of investment is the construction of the overseas headquarters R&D centers by NVIDIA and AMD in Taiwan, and how will this construction affect on Taiwan real GDP and overall price level in the short run? The first, the construction of overseas headquarters and R&D centers by NVIDIA and AMD in Taiwan is considered as a foreign direct investment or FDI. And foreign direct investment occurs when a company invests a facility or infrastructures in another country. And this type of investment can take several forms, including the establishment of products, R&D centers, or corporate headquarters in foreign country. Now we're gonna see, in this case, NVIDIA and AMD are investing Taiwan by constructing the headquarters and R&D center. This capability of Taiwan improve knowledge transfer and create jobs. Now we're gonna see the impact on Taiwan economy in the short run. In the short run, the construction of the overseas headquarters R&D centers by NVIDIA and AMD would likely to lead to the following effects on the Taiwan real GDP. As we're gonna see, we're gonna move to the second curve. Still the same, the y-axis is the price level, and also the x-axis is the output. The impact on the aggregate demand. The construction of these headquarters and R&D centers will increase the demands of goods and services in Taiwan. Specifically, will increase the investment, increase employment, and also increase consumption. So, in my opinion, the aggregate demand will shift to the right. And the impact on the aggregate supply. In the short run, the impact in the aggregate supply might be minimal, as the construction of the headquarters and R&D centers does not directly impact to the overall production capacity of Taiwan economy in the immediate term. However, there's a productivity gains over time. These R&D centers may lead to productivity, improvements in the semiconductor industries, which could positively impact AS in the long run, but in the short run, the effect on AS will be limited. And now we're gonna see in the impact on real GDP in Taiwan. Real GDP will be increased as the result of the increased investment from the reconstruction headquarters and R&D center, which stimulate demands for goods and services, as well employment and also income. The increase in investment spending will push up output in the short run. And also the impact to the price level, we're gonna see, here is the price level in the y-axis. The price level will likely rise. We see in the first, that is here, and now as we can see, the price level is here. There is an increase in the price level. Now we're gonna see in the question 3. What type of investment in the purchase of TSMC share by foreign investors? Do you expect this type of investment to directly affect Taiwan's aggregate demand in the short run? What impact will it have on Taiwan real GDP and overall price level in the short run? The purchase of TSMC shares by foreign investors represents a portfolio investment. Unlike the FDI, which involves the establishment or expansion of physical operations, portfolio investment involves the purchase of financial assets such as stocks, bonds, and foreign investors. And this type of portfolio investment involves the purchase of financial assets like stocks in a foreign country. This type of investment does not immediately lead to an increase in the country productivity capacity, unlike FDI, because it doesn't involve direct business operation or tangible capital investment in Taiwan economy. So the impact Taiwan's aggregate demand in the short run, the portfolio investment typically does not have a direct impact on aggregate demand in the short run. This is because the purchase of shares does not immediately translate into increased consumption or investment spending in the domestic economy. It primarily affects in the financial market and capital flows. While the purchase of shares could signal confidence in Taiwan economy, this not directly lead to an increased production or employment or consumption. Now we see in the Taiwan real GDP and price level in the short run. In real GDP, the purchase of TSMC shares unlikely to direct the impact of real GDP in the short run, since the portfolio investment does not immediately increase domestic production or employment. Real GDP may not experience significant change, and as a result of this transaction, the price level in the short run is also limited that didn't have a big impact on the price level, while the influx of the foreign investment might lead to increase the demand for TSMC shares and potentially drive up the stock market. This does not immediately affect the price of goods and services in the economy of Taiwan. Now we're gonna do number 4. If the Taiwanese government takes no action in response to the AI-driven economic growth, how will Taiwan real GDP and overall price change in the long run? Explain the reasoning using descriptive and also graphical analysis. Okay. If the Taiwanese government takes no action in response to AI-driven economic growth, we can expect in the following effect on the real GDP and price level in the long run. Now we're gonna draw the graph. The same, the y-axis is the price level and also the x-axis is the output. In the long run of real GDP, AI-driven economy typically leads to several transformative increased productivity, expansion on potential output, economic growth. Now we're gonna see in the long run also the overall price level. Technological advancement definitely we're gonna make the price level go up and increase aggregate demand. So the aggregate demand will go to shift rightward. But in this case, the government didn't take action of all. If the government does not intervene, the economy will retain natural growth by driven AI. So the demand, I think, in my opinion, will go downward, will go shift to the left. And also the price level will gonna shift to down because inflationary pressure may rise without government intervention such as fiscal or monetary policies to control inflation, and the economy could experience the demand pull inflation. So the summary of these four questions is like real GDP will likely decrease as an AI-driven growth enhances productivity didn't recognized by the government. Now we're in the last questions, and the question is the Taiwanese government concerned about the overheated economy, like asset bubbles in stock and housing markets driven by the AI boom. What types of fiscal and monetary policies could be implemented to cool down the economy? List one of fiscal policy or one monetary policy tool and explain how it can reduce the real GDP and overall price level. Okay, if the Taiwanese government is concerned about the overheated technology due to the AI boom, they can implement both fiscal and also monetary policies to cool down this economy. For this fiscal policy tool, the increase in taxes. The Taiwan government can increase taxes to reduce disposable income and also consumption. The effect on real GDP, higher taxes lead to the reduce of disposable income for household and lower after-tax profit for businesses. As a result, consumer will have less money to spend and businesses might cut back on investment. This reduce aggregate demand that leading to decrease in real GDP. So if we're gonna use the graphical analysis, by doing this increase in tax, the aggregate demand will shift to the left. It's gonna make the output is also going down and also the price level also going down. If you use the monetary policy tool, we're gonna increase the interest rate. The central bank can increase the interest rate to reduce borrowing and spending in the economy. The effect on real GDP, the higher interest rate make the borrowing more expensive, both for customers and businesses. As a result, the consumption and investment will decrease, leading to a reduction in aggregate demand, and lower the demand reduces the real GDP. And also the effect on the price level as the cost borrowing rises, the demand for goods and services falls. This will reduce the inflationary pressures and slow down the rise in price, leading to a reduction in the overall price level. And to summary, for this fiscal and monetary, fiscal policy increase in taxes and also monetary policy increase in the interest rate. Both those work by reducing aggregate demand in the economy, which led to a cooling down of the overheated economy, addressing the concerns such as asset bubbles and inflation. Thank you.
Hello, Professor Wu. My name is Gregorio Emanuel Jusak with student ID 113Z1043 Chong Pao Xiang. I will be presenting economy questions 3. So first question will be, how will these budget cuts directly influence aggregate demand in Taiwan? How will changes in aggregate demand affect real GDP and overall price level in Taiwan in the short run? Provide both descriptive and graphical analysis to support explanation. So first, the budget cuts will definitely reduce government spending, which is a key component of aggregate demand. As you can see, aggregate demand equals consumption plus uh, investment plus government spending plus net exports. So by logic, if G falls, AD will fall. So for the graph, AD will shift to the left. In the short run, a decrease in AD will result the real GDP to fall and the price level to drop. This is the graph. As you can see, the blue line is first AD, sorry for the mistake, it should be AD1, and the red dotted will be the AD2, where it shifts to the left, which shows a decrease in the equilibrium. Next, do you expect a multiplier effect to result from the decrease in government spending? Explain how the multiplier effect arises and how it can amplify the impact of the initial budget cut on the economy. So for this question, yes, the multiplier effect does exist. When government spending decreases, income in the economy drops. The budget cut will lead to less government income to households/businesses, which uh, will be leading to less consumption, which means that businesses will have less revenue and reduce further will cause further reductions in income. So based on the formula of 1 over 1 minus MPC, where MPC is the marginal propensity to consume for the multiplier formula, which means by this, if the MPC is high, the multiplier effect is strong. MPC is high when people spend most of what they earn. The multiplier effect spreads and amplifies throughout the economy, causing a larger overall drop in GDP, income, and jobs than the cut alone would suggest. So the total contraction is larger than the initial cut. For question 3, how will these budget cuts directly affect public saving? What will be the effects on demand and supply in Taiwan's loanable funds market? How will the real interest rate, private investment, private saving, and national saving be affected? Support your reasoning with both descriptive and graphical analysis. So for this question, budget cuts will increase public saving, which public saving is tax revenue minus government spending. If G falls, then public saving will increase. In the loanable funds market, supply of loanable funds will increase due to increased public saving, and the real interest rate will fall, whereas the private investment will increase because loans are cheaper, and private saving might fall slightly due to lower rates. Uh, Due to lower rates, national saving, on the other hand, is equal to public plus private, which likely will rise. So overall, national saving will increase. This is the graph where the supply shifts to the right, as you can see by the blue line here and the blue dotted line. S1 is the blue line and the S2 is the blue dotted line. The supply shifts to the right, as explained by before. For question number 4, based on your analysis in question 3, what will happen to Taiwan's net capital outflow? Provide both descriptive and graphical explanations for your answer. So, with lower interest rates, Taiwan become less attractive to investors, which by this case, NCO is basically the net purchase of foreign assets by domestic residents. So when real interest rates in Taiwan fall, the investors look abroad, which will increase NCO, as you can see by the graph here. The net purchase of foreign assets by domestic residents and the real interest rate investor seeks foreign assets, so it will definitely increase by this graph right here. This is NCO1 and NCO2. It will see that it rises over to from NCO1 to NCO2. So next, how will the change in net capital outflow affect the supply of new Taiwan dollars in the foreign currency exchange market? Use a graphical analysis to show the impact on the real exchange rate and Taiwan's trade balance or net exports. The diagram place the real exchange rate on the vertical axis and the quantity of NTD dollar exchanged into foreign currency on the horizontal axis. So basically, higher NCO increases the supply of NT dollars in the foreign exchange market, as investors will convert NT dollars to foreign currency. This will lead to increase in supply of NT dollars. Real exchange rate will depreciate, where NT dollar will lose its value, and net exports will increase, where because Taiwanese goods will be cheaper to foreigners. As you can see in this graph, the supply will shift from 1 to 2, which means that it will increase, and the real exchange rate will definitely increase as well, and the quantity will stay like this. Graphically, supply of NT dollar shifts right, lowering the real exchange rate and raising net exports. Oh, sorry. It will lower the real exchange rate. Based on your previous analysis in questions 3 and 5, how will these budget cuts indirectly influence Taiwan's aggregate demand? By summarizing the direct impact of reduced government spending, the multiplier effect, and the indirect effects via the loanable funds and foreign exchange markets, do you expect aggregate demand in Taiwan to increase or decrease as a result of the legislative yuan's budget cuts? So, to put it all together, the direct cut in G reduces AD. So government spending reduced, aggregate demand shift left. The multiplier effect will be in the initial drop in G reduces total spending through the multiplier process, which further shifts AD to the left. Through the indirect effects from the loanable funds market, the reduce in government borrowing will increase public saving, which increase supply of loanable funds, which reduces real interest rate and increases private investment. Where in forex market, real interest rate will decrease, net capital outflow increase, supply of anti-dollars in forex market increase, the exchange rate decrease, and net exports increase. So overall, Taiwan's economy experienced a larger contraction than just the budget cut itself. So there will be a decrease in aggregate demand. So that's basically it. Thank you.